What we were really passionate about was making sure that we had equitable access for all of our team members. And that was really at the forefront of a decision like IGS ChatGPT, because we wanted to make sure that people felt comfortable with using the tool and that we had it available to everybody. And for us, rolling out something like that, really private label ChatGPT solution for our employees in a safe and secure way, we thought we weren't going to try to calculate any type of return on investment for this. For us, it was much more important that we looked at it as a return on our employee experience and a way for us to upskill our team if that was something they wanted to pursue. If we really force a solution on someone, it's going to be something that they resent no matter how great it is. So we wanted to make sure that it was there and optional for people to use, because we think the upskilling of our staff is going to be something that's really, really important in years to come. AI isn't going to replace people's job anytime soon, but somebody proficient with AI will.
Jenni, Adam, welcome to the show. How are you both?
Doing well.
Yeah, that's the moment where you're like, who do I go first? Who says it? It's always awkward.
We go together.
Oh, is that yeah?
Yes.
Why? You two are way too friendly considering it's IT and HR. I don't know what's happening right now. It doesn't make sense to me. But it's great that you have such a strong relationship. I've only just met you both, and I can tell you have a lot of fun.
We do.
Working together. And Adam, it's your birthday today, right?
Yes.
Happy birthday. I don't think
April Fool's Day.
No, but it's your birthday. Don't fool everyone on the podcast. I don't think I've ever had someone on the show on their birthday. This might be out of 1,300 plus episodes. This might be a first. So thank you for joining. If I would have known, I would have got a cake on the table or something for you. But thanks for joining. Before we jump in, let's do some quick intros. Jenni, could you kick us off? Just introduce yourself and your role in the business.
Yeah. My name is Jenni Kovach, and I'm the Chief People Officer with IGS Energy. And that just means I'm responsible for the teams that really oversee employee engagement.
Amazing. You made that sound really like it was a simple job, but you undersold that one on there. Adam?
My name's Adam Luck. I've been at IGS 9 years almost to the day.
Wow. And
I'm one of the leaders in our IT department, and I cover areas including enterprise technology and cybersecurity.
Like when you say that and then you think of an energy company, there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders especially when I used to run one of the world's largest cybersecurity summits in my previous job, and that was probably one of the most fascinating jobs or events I would ever go to every year, and it's ever evolving now with AI.
Absolutely. It makes our jobs easier and more challenging in cybersecurity.
Yeah, exactly. Jenni, could you tell everyone a little bit about the organization that perhaps aren't aware of the business before we jump in?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are a family-owned private organization that's been around for 35 years. Our main product that we sell is commodity, natural gas and electricity, but we also have a growing solar business. We also play in the CNG and biogas area as well. So really, we are a retailer for energy for both commercial and residential customers.
That's so fascinating. Like in this day and age, I'm sure there can't be that many family-owned businesses in this space.
There's not that many. We've looked around for others, like us, because I think when you're family-owned, private, you have less. You have less quarterly earning, you don't have to meet those goals. So you can kind of look at things through the long term versus the short term. And so we always try and look for companies like us so we can network.
Yeah. And I'm sure it also gives you a competitive advantage. It allows you to be a bit more disruptive and innovative, and you could pivot a lot quicker.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
So today I'm excited for this conversation. It's very rarely I get HR and IT in one room and they like each other. So I'm really excited about. I'm only joking about that. I mean, it's not always the case in companies. So I'd love to talk about the collaboration between HR and IT, and also how you've collaborated on co-creating your AI strategy, which is kind of the topic of the day. So could you talk us through like how HR and IT can effectively partner to translate the workforce needs into scalable compliance and AI solutions, because that's something you work closely on, and honestly it's probably one of the biggest challenges right now for our audience.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Jenny and I really started working closely together at the start of the pandemic and navigating some of the challenges and sending our workforce home safely and securely using technology. And I think that really helped adjust my leadership style personally because I realized during a time of crisis and watching Jenny and other members of our executive team that we really had to lean on our principles. And one of those really was just thinking of the people first and knowing that everything else would sort itself out afterwards. And I think we've been able to lean into those same foundational principles through the way that we're looking at AI for the organization.
I suppose the question is for our audience, where do you get started on that journey? Because many are just in the beginning stages of thinking about governance and setting up an AI ethics councils and stuff like that. Could you share the journey that you've been on and some of the lessons learned?
It was actually funny because it was a few years ago. I went to a conference, an HR conference, and it was all about AI. And I'm like, I came back from it and I'm like, hey Adam, I think we might need to talk about this a little bit. And so we immediately decided that it should be a people led just strategy for us rather than a technology led. Number one, that fits our company. But secondly, we know that without the people and without buy-in and without support and training, AI isn't going to work. So we thought, taking a people first approach. So I think that first call, we were talking about it and we were like, hey, you know what? Let's get some folks together throughout the organization. We call it our AI steering committee. Let's make sure that we're making decisions going forward with cross-functional team rather than just me and Adam. So that's where it started. Adam can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, we were fortunate that we made early investments in AI as a company dating back to 2018. But a lot of the processes that we had were very core to our business, but behind the scenes and not employee facing. So we were able to take a team that we had invested in early and refine those skills to work on generative AI projects that can help the enterprise and help all of our employees. And really, the technology part of my job is really the easiest part. This was really more of an exercise in change management, and that's where it was really helpful and effective for me to lean on Jenny and her team and that cross-functional leadership group that's intentionally led by Jenny. So we're really thinking about how this impacts the employee base because candidly, there was a lot of fear initially. We had people concerned, is this ultimately going to be something that replaces my job? So we really wanted to think about it from that mindset and make sure that we were getting a diverse perspective because we knew we had people from different walks of life in the way that we were looking at this technology. We had people who were savvy users, early adopters, and then people who wanted nothing to do with it. So we really had to consider it from multiple lenses.
What does that mean
Yeah,
from
it
a
was
practical sense, though, Jenny? Like you mentioned, being human led rather than technology led. What does that mean practically? Can you give me some examples of some decisions that you made or some projects you launched and how you made sure it was through the lens of leading with a human first?
Yes, absolutely. It real quick, going back to that first time I called Adam about it and said we might need to start thinking about this. He's like, well, you do know we have generative AI in our technologies. And I'm like, no, had no idea. Had no idea. So we had been using it for a few years and I didn't even know because it was behind the scenes. So really when we started to think about, okay, how do we introduce this to the organization? The biggest part was we didn't make it a requirement. We didn't make it a, hey, you have to use the IGS ChatGPT or you have to use this HR bot. We took it more along the lines of this is a really cool thing that might help you in your job. That probably will help you in your job, but we're going to leave it open to your comfort level. What we are going to do is we're going to provide you some opportunities to play around with it, right? Get comfortable with it. And then, of course, we on the other side, we're tracking the usage, right? And so we're starting to see people and we're seeing like a perfect bell curve. Actually, it was pretty cool. And so then we started reaching out to folks who were using some of the technologies a lot. They were using them every day, constantly. They always had it open. Then we reached out to the folks who went in once and never went back in, right? And we asked why. And we just talked to people and we got their feedback. And some of it was they were scared. Some of it, some people didn't understand it. And so after we gathered that feedback, then we decided, okay, what's next? What do we do next for those folks? And we decided that there was obviously a need for some additional workshops, some maybe sharing of use cases so that people could start to get more comfortable using the technologies. And so with that being said, we started to see an increase in people using it. And we started to get this momentum throughout the organization of people talking internally about how they're using it. And that I think has been really beneficial to us. I think from a technology standpoint, Adam, you can talk a little bit more to that, but I know that our first kind of larger organizational rollout was with our IGS internal ChatGPT. And a big part of that was, and I think a lot of companies see this, you see your employees using ChatGPT and you start going, oh, we need to make sure we have a secure space for people to play around in this.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of our first larger rollout. And that's when we really started to talk to people and get their feedback. But since then, we've rolled out some other company-wide, and we've also tied some into our already built technologies that Adam can probably speak to.
Yeah, when we were first talking about what the problems were that we needed to solve, we again leaned back on some of those principles that we had. And Jenni and I were talking about the early days of tech and when some of these type of tools were originally brought into organizations. And in a lot of cases, the first computers were just given to the top 10, 20% of employees. And unfortunately, that started to create the digital divide. And what we were really passionate about was making sure that we had equitable access for all of our team members. And that was really at the forefront of a decision like IGS ChatGPT, because we wanted to make sure that people felt comfortable with using the tool and that we had it available to everybody in a low cost way. And I think really for us, AI is just another tool in the tool set. We really wanted to make sure every time we were rolling out something that it was focused more on what problem are we trying to solve. And for us, rolling out something like that really private label ChatGPT solution for our employees in a safe and secure way, we thought we weren't going to try to calculate any type of return on investment for this. For us, it was much more important that we looked at it as a return on our employee experience and a way for us to upskill our team if that was something they wanted to pursue. Because I've worked in tech long enough to realize that if we really force a solution on something to someone, it's going to be something that they resent no matter how great it is. So we wanted to make sure that it was there and optional for people to use because we think the upskilling of our staff is going to be something that's really, really important in years to come. I'm sure you've heard it and it's probably been said on this podcast already, but AI isn't going to replace people's job anytime soon, but somebody proficient with AI will. And Jenni and I were both very passionate from the beginning that we didn't want that to happen to our team members.
Yeah. I love the fact that you started by creating the sandbox and no pressure for them just to play in the sandbox, be curious, right? You know, you're not saying do this specific task or here's a specific use case, because then already you're going to have barriers popping up, right? What does this mean? Why are you asking me to do this? Is this replacing my job? But giving them a safe space to be in the sandbox and play around with it, make it accessible to everyone, to a point of view. And then I think you mentioned, Jenni, then leveraging the stories and examples of how people are doing it and sharing that back to the organization. That's you know, I can see how that will be very powerful because it's through those stories and those examples from and it's coming from the employees, not from you and the team. You know, this if it came to, hey, this is a HR thing or this is an IT thing, you know, as opposed to here are some really cool examples around how some of your colleagues are leveraging this in their role and here's the value. That's going to be 10 times stronger, right? Than it feeling like it's coming from being pushed on them from the business.
Yeah, and we asked them to provide personal experiences too.
Yeah, great.
Like using generative AI to your itinerary for your next vacation and anything else so that people could just get in there and play around and feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah. So what were some of the interesting, maybe surprising use cases that came out of that exploration?
I think one of my personal favorites that saved me hours a week initially was just the meeting recordings and transcriptions and ability to ask questions. So we leverage Microsoft Copilot and integrate it into Microsoft Teams, and having those transcriptions gave me more autonomy to not go to a meeting if I was just going to be kind of lurking in the background just to get accurate meeting notes. And by doing that, I'm able to be more present in other conversations. And I think it's made us more efficient as an organization. And we've also been able to have more productive meetings because if somebody joins late, they can ask the chatbot that's off to the side, what did I miss? Is there anything that's been unresolved to this point? As opposed to us starting over completely from scratch. And I think that's been a very pragmatic use case that we've seen throughout the organization. And I think that's where we're seeing the largest adoption rates so far.
And I would say, Chris, that we made a decision at the beginning that we would track usage, but we wouldn't necessarily look at what people were using it for. We were only looking at the actual amount of time they spent in the technology. But from what I've heard, I would guess that if we said what's the most used, it's how do I write this better? Help me
make this sound better, please.
Yes, make this sound better. From an HR perspective, I'll tell you, I will never again write a job description. Never again.
Yeah.
Huge savings time for us. We were in the middle of a huge compensation project where we had about 500 job descriptions to update and rewrite, and it was done very simply. But yeah, I think most people you would ask, and they use it to either help them pull together an email or a document or a PowerPoint, something along those lines.
I love your example, by the way, as well, Adam, because that's kind of my example. If you asked me to give you an example, I would have given you the same answer, and even deeper in the sense of, even now when I'm having one-to-ones, I'm present in the room because I'm not taking notes. So I'll have like an AI, because normally I'm like writing notes and then I'm asking questions. So you're not fully engaged in the conversation and you're not showing that person that you really care and that you're listening. But now having an AI note taker just on my phone or on my laptop, it allows me to be present with that person and give them the quality attention and time. And then I know I have the notes later that I can go back to. And to your point, if I'm not in a meeting, I don't need to be in a meeting because I can have the notes after and be like, hey, what did I miss? And ask the chat, and it will tell, okay, this is what's been shared and this is what you missed. This is where you were mentioned in there, just to make things easier. And I would say that's probably taken we worked out with all of our AI tools combined, it saves me an entire day per week. So we're talking about transcriptions of the podcast. We're talking about generative AI tools that edit content for us. When we added up all of the efficiencies gained by all of the various AI tools we've adopted across the whole business, for me personally, it just saves me an entire day of work that I was doing before as well, even down to the point where we have AI tools connected to my LinkedIn account to deal with messages in and out and engagement, which I was spending hours and hours and hours doing. So I love the fact that the simple examples for anyone listening, but very practical, that people will actually go, I'm going to keep coming back to use this now. I don't know how I did this before. I'm never writing a job description again. That is the reality of this. One of the things that a lot of our listeners struggle with, and I'd love to hear both of your answers to this, is how do they create meaningful relationships with their technology and IT team? What advice would you give Jenni and then ask you, Adam, on how to make this relationship work? How do they reach out? How do you both deal with conflict? Because it ain't always going to be all smiles along the way, because that's really what's going to help our audience in terms of how you build that partnership that you clearly have created.
Yes. So I think I would say mutual respect, a lot of trust for one another, and a lot of humor. Are probably the three things that land on our relationship and the relationship between our HR team and our IT function. We are lucky enough that we have long tenure at IGS. So most of us have worked together a very long time. We're friends inside and outside of the business. But really, truly, it's because I think our IT team understands people, and they come in with a lot of care. and a lot of heart. And they always put our employee experience first. And that makes my job super easy. I get to work with some incredible people that are so smart, but they also get how important just having an engaged population is. And so I would say I'm just lucky to get to work with Adam.
Everyone
and
listening
a lot
right
of
now
other
is like,
folks.
we're so jealous of you, Jenni. Thanks so much for showing off how.
I'm lucky, man.
Yeah. Adam's like, I'm unlucky. I got to put up with Jenni every day. I'm joking. Go on, Adam.
I think it's interesting because to me, it really boils down to trust. And I tend to look at things first from a cybersecurity lens, just with that being part of my responsibility. But that typically requires me to take a step back and really focus on the empathy. And one of the first things that we worked on with this council or steering committee was coming up with an AI ethics policy because we wanted to make sure that we had appropriate guardrails in place
Yeah.
if we did have a conflict or a tool that we wanted to adopt that we weren't comfortable with. Um, and we started working on that policy, and somebody on Jenni's team immediately said, why aren't we just basing this on our principles as an organization? And really it tied in with everything perfectly. Just something as simple as a concept of doing the right thing. And we really wanted to make sure that everything that we were doing leaned on those principles because we felt that if we had that backbone, we would ultimately make the right decision for us and the organization to make sure that people felt comfortable with the tool set. But I think one of the best decisions we made early on, and I spoke to it earlier, is just not focusing on the profits here or the return on this investment. I think that's something that we benefit from, like we were talking about earlier, with being privately held and the ability to make a decision like this that's purely just based on the people and doing the right thing for them so that we can ultimately upskill our workforce. Because I think that AI is just another tool in our tool belt when it comes to technology. And for us, we really wanted to make sure that ultimately we're constantly focusing on what problem it is that we're trying to solve as opposed to hey, let's lean in and use AI for this.
Yeah. I mean, whilst that's amazing, not everyone has that luxury of listening right now. Many people are probably thinking, well, that's great for you, but how do I get leadership buy-in? Because my leadership maybe aren't as forward thinking, and they're like, hey, we need a clear financial ROI if we're going to make this investment. So what would be your advice to everyone listening of how to get the leadership buy-in on this?
That makes sense. And I will say a lot of the concepts we've been talking about today are more enterprise focused, where we do have the luxury of not necessarily looking for that ROI.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking for something that truly is going to help move the business along, we definitely try to consider what the impact will be to the organization and also how do we want to show up in terms of the way that we're adopting AI. Are we doing something that's really going to be a disruptor to the industry? That's going to be a core process that our organization works on? Or is it something where we're just looking to augment work where it's not ultimately that fulfilling to the employee? So I think for us, I hate giving the answer, it depends, but it really depends on what the use case is. And there are times where we do have to lean on that if it's something that's going to be a large lift for the organization or a significant amount of a spend. I mentioned earlier that we've had a team dedicated to this since 2018. I truly consider them to be pragmatic leaders in this space because for us, we don't want to just invest in something just for the sake of adopting AI, as I mentioned earlier, but it really is important to us that we're using those resources in a fair and effective way. And whether it's something as simple as this is how many hours we're saving in labor by streamlining this process, or a lot of our business really focuses on our ability to predict. And so if we're able to do that effectively, then we can really try to quantify that in an appropriate way. But for me, I think it's important to take a step back and think about which of those buckets that ultimately your problem is going to fall into.
So one example I can share that Adam was just speaking to is we spent quite a bit of time rebuilding our commercial and industrial sales technology, and I think the project lasted 2 years, and we finally got data back, and we gave back 20% of our sales folks' time to sell away from doing more administrative duties. So that there is a return on investment that you can speak to, where you can actually say this is the amount of time that these folks can now spend, doing what we want them to do. So there are It's not what, like, we spend freely. We do always make sure that it's the right thing for the business. But a lot of our technologies that have used generative AI, they have provided opportunity for our employees to spend time doing things that are more meaningful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love the sales example because it doesn't get more concrete than
Yeah.
if you're freeing up 20% of your sales team's time, you could very easily predict and look at the, the increase in sales, or just time spent with customers, right? More meaningful connections and spending time. And I'm saying for your team, I'm sure in HR, right? The time for your in terms of recruitment that you save now, use it leveraging AI tools, right? To then spend more time, quality time with candidates
With candidates
and having
Yep.
conversations, right? As opposed to some of the manual data admin,
Mhm.
which we all love
Mhm.
as well. Where do you see the biggest opportunity ahead for HR, IT to leverage AI? Like, where I know you're just at the beginning of the journey, but where do you see the biggest opportunity ahead?
No, Adam has a thought on this. I'll go second.
Okay. To me, I think there are just a lot of use cases where we're answering questions where we have the documentation for. And I think that's been one of the more powerful uses of AI throughout our organization is just this concept of enterprise search, where we have all these disparate platforms and it's not easy for our employees to figure out where to go for certain information. And a great example was we had a chatbot available for our open enrollment and our benefits team. And we have an amazing benefits package at IGS, but it can be difficult to navigate. And myself personally, I dealt with a situation recently where I had a question where I would have reached out to somebody on Jenny's team, but I decided to try the chatbot. And sure enough, I got an accurate answer. It saved me a lot of time. But I think the important thing that we realized in rolling out that solution was that we wanted to meet everybody where they were. There was nothing preventing me, and nobody said I can't reach out to somebody on Jenny's team. That was just an option for me to get a response faster. And I think there's just going to be a lot more opportunities for us in that space, particularly that'll help speed up training and onboarding and access to information that's just going to make our employees more productive and more efficient in how they sign this documentation. So, for example, you're on a call with a customer and you have to go through some edge case process. We're working on situations that's going to help access our training documentation to say it's this type of customer, this is the process that you follow. And that's ultimately going to provide a better customer experience too, because maybe that avoids their call being transferred or ultimately leads to a faster time to resolution. And those are metrics that I see us tracking more thoroughly in the future as well. But to me, the biggest concept that I'm excited for us to dive into at the intersection of HR and IT is just empowering employees by giving them easy access to information.
Yeah, I love that.
I couldn't have said it better. My word was empower. So
You just stole what Jenny was going to say now. She's like, thanks, Adam.
we talk for each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so interesting you say this because we spent the last 2 years actually creating what you just described. So we created a tool called Atlas Copilot. We worked with thousands of HR executives. We trained the HR agent on over 10,000 hours of content, thousands of documents, and now we've integrated that with their HCM, with their with their service now where they keep their policies, etc., with their benefits. So now that HR leaders and their teams have a tool and their employees where they can ask a question and instantly get access to that document, but more importantly, take them to the exact line in the document that gives them the answer, or the exact second in a video that answers their question and then translates it into any language, and integrates and surfaces inside of Teams. So it's cool to hear you both say that because that's kind of the feedback we were getting for many, many years. So we went out and partnered with Microsoft and others to build the world's first AI Copilot for HR. So it's so cool to see that you're doing this already internally, and it's exciting. And I'm with you, Adam. Like the fact that I can ask a question and instantly get that answer. And sometimes you don't want to speak to someone. It could be something sensitive, right? That you want to just ask that question. It could be around well-being. It could be around a specific benefit you don't really want to talk about. And getting that answer without having to speak to someone, right? And also customizing it to each employee. I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about is the personalization opportunity that we can do with AI, that we do with our customers already, but we don't do with our employees. And I think there's an opportunity to use generative AI to scale personalization for employees as well. I think benefits would be a perfect one. Like really delivering the benefits they need at their moment in their life, at that the moments that matter, I like to call it, as well. So I know we're running out of time, but we need to do like a part 2 of this. As well, we barely got into anything. Before I let you both go, where can people find you if they want to connect with you personally? Where's the best place, and also what's the website for people to check out the business?
The website is IGS.com, and I think both of us are on LinkedIn.
Nice.
Adam Luck and Jenni Kovach, so you can always reach out to us that way.
Amazing. Well, don't blame me for all the messages you're going to get now. I'm just putting that out there immediately. Ahead of time. Chris, what's wrong? What's happened to my LinkedIn inbox? And for anyone listening, wherever you're listening or watching right now, the links will be in the description to both their LinkedIn profiles and their website. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Honestly, like I almost feel like is it April Fools that you guys have such a good relationship? Is that what's happening right now? Because I think so many people are going to listening and be pretty jealous. But thank you for being honest and sharing your journey and experience. And I'm super excited for what you have ahead. Clearly, you have a very engaged leadership team that truly get it. And I love the fact that you started this conversation with leading with the human first and technology second, and that you've created such a strong bond and trust between you to make a real difference. That's not just going to impact the lives of your employees, but also your customers. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.